rooted in respect and honor.
Well, respect and friendship are not only
Based on respect, and that is utterly disrespectful.
it's fundamental according to you.
Yes.
But we also are the biggest development cooperation recipients from Germany in Africa.
Isn't that the least somebody that can do that looted you and murdered you? Isn't that the very least? Is that something to clap and applaud for?
No, it's just a reality.
If I come and loot and kill your family, then afterwards I bring you a few shirts, are you going to clap for me, really?
That's what's happening.
Yeah, but then you also need to ask yourself, where do you define your value? Can you really repay murder? Can you really repay genocide with a few little cheap donations? How do you define your value as a people? You know? And that's where I feel something has to happen in the mindsets of people here, because I come across this quite a lot, and that's what's saddening me, where I see the mental brainwashing has taken its toll on people, that they came to believe that this is all they deserve, you know, after what has happened. You have to understand that so-called developed countries would not be where they were if it wasn't for free labor, free resources, and so on, so on, so on, that they took from countries like Namibia, you know, and many others across the world. So we can't just refer to a first world and a third world. We can't refer to a world or countries that have previously been colonized, and we can refer to countries that have colonized and made use of free resources and free labor, and that's why they're ahead of others. And that's the very least they can do, is give a little. But I feel that's not enough.
What about you to prosperity? You said your definition of prosperity is something else. Could you elaborate?
Yes,
on what?
because from poverty to prosperity, that already implies that Namibia is a poor country, which is it. It isn't. As I said, it has been colonized, it has been looted, it has suffered from apartheid. Apartheid is one of the worst crimes against humanity, okay? So that is almost like saying after Reichskristallnacht, the Jews were poor. It's just like, no, something happened here. You know, it's like talking to a doctor that will just analyze the symptoms. That is not healing, you know, and that will never really tackle the root and will not solve the problem. Namibia is not poor. The question should be, how can we redefine prosperity? How can we improve prosperity? How can we readdress our resources? You know, that should be the question. But poverty is a consequence of what has happened here. You know, these are symptoms. Namibia is not poor. The average American is poorer than the average Namibian, so let's put it that way. And these are numbers. That is something you can quantify.
So realignment of resources and perhaps reprioritizing, adding value to our minerals and our products. Would you say that would help in terms of making prosperity for Namibia?
I believe so, because at this point in the 21st century, Namibia competes on a global market, you know, because of what has happened. But let's be very honest, Namibia has not been poor before being invaded by terrorism, apartheid, colonialism, and whatever you want to call it. You know, in the modern terms, we would define it as terrorism. Back then, it was called colonialism, conquest, apartheid. Namibia was not poor before then, you know. So basically, Namibia is ridding themselves of the aftermath of a disease, you know. Namibia had a cancer, so to speak, you know, and it still doesn't have regrown its hair, you know, it's still suffering from that chemotherapy. Namibia is bold at the moment, but Namibia is not poor. It's one of the richest countries in the world. Yeah, number one, we all must be very careful in our terminology. I feel every day we feed into the lie. You know, we all have played this tell-a-tale game since the beginning of time. By the way, we've been brainwashed through history, misconstrued history in schools and so on, you know, where we've been taught one perspective. of the colonizers around the world. And so we need to all acknowledge that aid is not coming from the Western world to Africa. It never has, never. Aid is coming from Africa to the Western world. The Western world would not be able to survive, not even a year, without Africa, you know. And so, me, Mallence, I think what is a characteristic that defines me, I'm very particular and try to be immaculate with my word and with my language and define my own truth that I consider an absolute truth, not because the media has instilled it in me or books have instilled it in me. The truth is that a lot of things are not the way they are being portrayed, you know, and Africa is rich. Africa doesn't need nobody. You know, Africa, I feel, is suffering also from a cancer, you know, and the cancer has been European invasion, and these cancerous cells that are still like myomes all over the continent. Africa is gradually ridding themselves of that cancer, you know. So
it's a cancer of mental slavery.
These are, I would say, symptoms of the cancer, you know, because if you suffer from cancer, it will have a psychological effect on you. But Africa is not poor, never has been, you know, it's been portrayed, it has been looted, and it's being looted as we speak. So it's a constant battle.
Yes, so as a filmmaker also, you didn't speak about that, but would you say then Africa should tell its own story?
Yeah, indeed, because there is a beautiful African proverb, until the lion tells its own story, the hunter will always be glorified, and that is exactly what's the case in regards to Africa. Africa needs to tell its own story, not just through the medium of film, but in schools. You know, where do we get our books from? How dare we assume? How dare we assume? Yeah, I love it. It's nature. How dare we assume to speak a language of somebody that brought nothing but pain? You know, when I go to South Africa and I hear people speak Afrikaans, it stirs a feeling of nausea, because for me it's something to listen to that. It's so repulsive, number one, because it defines a very low social status, not exactly a very intellectual language, and I love language. I love the beauty of language, and it's a very primitive dialect. Let's say that it's not a language, but that people that have been victim of such a system assume that, you know, by which this system has been introduced. I find this is sad to see. You know, we need to write our own history. We need to teach our own history in schools according to what we believe and according to what is rooted in our own tradition, our own ancestry. You know, and I feel when you look at a tree, no tree can really grow. And this storm is a perfect example. When you look at the wind, a wind will immediately unroot a tree that is not deeply rooted, you know? So every crown is only as big as its roots. And that is what needs to happen in Africa. Poverty, this, plan that. Unless we're really rooted into our own, what belongs to us, 100% tradition, we cannot grow grand.
The most important person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs.